Cartography, a practice of drawing and designing maps. But when we create maps, it's far more than that. When we create maps, we create worlds in our mind. We visualize them and put our soul and passion for them. We may never physically visit these fantastical lands, but we fantasize about them. What will come to life if one day our imagination and creativity will collaborate to birth a map so intricate and so immersive that it becomes a gateway to another world. Maps brings a lot of soul and feeling of place for your stories and for your world building especially. The first act of any world building is an idea, but the second and most crucial one is designing the world. And maps are a graphical manifestation, a visual representation of the feeling of place. Some maps can bring with them the birth of new realms, the shaping of landscapes and the weaving of stories, of its geography, of its culture. Every single line, every single mountain range, every single hill and lake, every mile of the coastline will now determine how things operate. What cultures will develop, what places will be rich and what places will be obscure and rural, where the biggest events will take place and which places will be mysterious and forgotten for millennia just to be discovered by brave explorers. All of that will be born out of the land you create, and a map is the crucial tool for your world building. So what are maps for in storytelling? Well, let me ask you differently. Why do you need a map? Yes, you specifically, you as a creator and as a writer. Why do you need a map when you write a story? Because the maps that you create are an extremely useful tool to help you, well, map out the geography, the journey your characters go through, etc. And there are a lot of different maps that are either necessary or very useful to have. There's actually 3 types of map that you need. And I'm not talking about the geographical layout and all of that stuff. I'm talking from the perspective of a creator. No matter in what genre you create your story, you always need those 3 types of maps. First one, which I call the writer's map, is for you and only for you, no one else. This is a map of your world or an area that your story takes place in, where you put everything. All the things that you will need in your story, all the things that are important. Of course, I'm saying a map, but it can be a lot of different maps. One of the regions that your story takes place in, for example, another for the underground dungeon, and maybe yet another for the city layout, if there is a lot of urban adventures in your stories. Let me give you an example. When I play RPGs, especially Warhammer Fantasy, what I do is I show my players the generic map. There's plenty of maps of the Empire on the internet. However, me as a game master, I use the super detailed map, which is very, very detailed and works almost like Google Maps. I usually download it and add to all of that stuff my own places, my own camps of bandits and secret hideouts and stashes, things that I, as the all-knowing game master, would know, but my players' characters simply cannot. And you can do that for everything. A book that you're writing, a video game that you're designing, whatever. The second type of map, which I call the audience map, is for your character. But it's not that simple. This map is more of a representation of what your characters knows. This is less of a physical map that is in-universe inside of the story, but more of a representation of what do you want your audience to know about the world. So, like with the previous example that I gave, the super extra detailed map is the first category, the one that I use as a game master, and the second category would be the generic Warhammer map for my players, because it contains the general layout of the empire that they play in, right? The biggest cities and what neighboring countries are to the empire, and some major geographical landmarks, but not much else. That is a generic knowledge that their characters would probably know. And you can see a similar thing with Metro 2033, where in the book there is a map of the area that the story takes place in. It's very generic, but it gives you a good understanding where Artyom is, but does not spoil anything. And there are also areas that the main character goes to that are not shown in the map. There are also shortcuts between the stations that are not visible as well. And the third category is the in-universe map. So a map that is a physical item that exists in your story, something that your character have access to. It's harder to implement in a book, but far easier in a video game or a movie. It's something plot relevant that is represented in the world. In the RPG video game Gothic, to see the world you need to acquire a physical map from one of the vendors. Sometimes you can also buy maps of different specific location if you want to know how, for example, a city layout look like. Sometimes a character in the story can take your map and draw something on it. So it's the only map that physically exists in your story. When creating a map, and especially the in-universe map, you need to remember that the more immersive and realistic it is for your world, the more engaging and interesting for your audience it will be. And I'm not talking only about the overall design, but also the aesthetics. A fantasy map that is made on paper or parchment, with those cool monsters and creatures that you see on some medieval maps, can add a lot of flavor. For sci-fi maps, because yes, science fiction also needs maps, you can have them cold, very pragmatically showing extreme details of a specific type. Maybe a geographical map with almost inhuman amount of geographical details, but not much else. But of course, flavor will not be the key to engage people with your maps. You need a good immersive design. Now, what is immersive design? That's what I like to call the less is more factor. The common mistake that people make when designing a map for their universe is making it too detailed. They try to show everything exactly how it is. Some video games don't even pretend and just show you exactly what you want and need. The thing is, by removing certain elements from your map or making it a bit unreliable in some sense, you can invoke a sense of mystery and actually tell more about something than showing everything ever could. There is a great example of a video game called Thief. In Thief, you play as Garrett, who is a thief. And whenever Garrett goes to a heist, he has access to a map for the place he's trying to rob. But it's not like he managed to steal very concrete plans of a building he's trying to rob. No, instead, Garrett makes a sketch of the place by asking people around, maybe bribing some low-paid people who work there to describe how the place is organized. Sometimes the map he gets is very, very outdated and extremely broad with just a couple of landmarks shown. Sometimes he has absolutely no clue what lies in a specific area because he didn't manage to get his hands on anyone who knows what lies somewhere. Sometimes he bases his knowledge and sketch on some old map with the additional comments of his clients. These maps work extremely well in terms of immersive storytelling. You as a player knows as much as Garrett, and sometimes you need to think more about certain places based on the information provided. Sometimes, especially where you lack information, your imagination can build a lot of mystery. A map can also infer a lot of information without saying anything out loud. In my Gothic video, I talked about how the geographical positioning of the old camp in the middle of the valley makes it a powerhouse that controls trade, and how the other camps function based on the layout of the terrain that they are placed on. You can check that video if you want to see how a map in a RPG game can be very well implemented. Of course, there is a lot of things that goes into designing a map. We can go, very, very deep into very specific thing, like how a mountain range should be arranged, how a mountain range can affect people living nearby, how affect, people who live inside the mountain range, what are different types of mountains, we can pick one thing and just, keep talking and talking and talking about it. This video is supposed to be more of an introduction to the concept of maps and why do you actually need them, because most people when they think about maps they just make map, that's my fantasy universe, I make a map for it, done, that's basically it. But if you want to create something, if you want to publish something and make something successful and you want your audience to experience what you want to show them, then it is very good to remember about categorizing the types of map that you're making, and not only based on what this map is showing, but also what is the exact purpose of the map, not in the world, but the purpose for you as as a creator, as a writer. Actually, map designing is something that I always really, really love, and I believe this is the first thing that pushed me into world building, because when I was young, my drawing my drawing skills were very bad, but the one thing that I really loved drawing, and people said that I really do it really well was drawing maps. Of course, I stopped drawing it and I started designing them in the online different tools that I have, like Incarnate especially. By the way, I'm not sponsored by Incarnate, but if Incarnate want to sponsor me, you know, I'm open in DMs. But yeah, that is all for today. And if you are interested in videos like this one, you can check my previous ones, so subscribe to the channel. Or if you want to also talk to me and talk to other people who are like-minded, you can join the Writers Guild down in the description. But for now, that's all. We will see each other next week with more of a guide, this time a bit longer. But of course, during the week, I'll also throw some videos that are more of a, you know, loose ramblings about certain topics. But that is all for today. And remember that you're always just one page, one chapter away from greatness. Have a great day.